Hello everyone, I'm Vico. I am marketing manager at Doc, and today we are here for another AMA where we have collected questions from our community, and especially seeing the market conditions this time and what all has happened in the crypto industry, we felt it was really important to address the issues and at the same time update you with what all is happening at Doc, what our milestones are. And on this note, just to start with, I have with me Nick Lambert, who is the CEO at Doc. Nick, to start with this AMA, can you just give a brief introduction about what all things we are working at right now and like the latest updates that are happening at Doc Network?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Vico. I think the main focus for us right now is really focused on business development and adoption of Doc. So for those that don't know, Doc is a platform for issuing trusted to verified data called credentials. And our big focus is really ensuring that people are coming onto the platform and really getting them to start using it. And the information that we gather from those early interactions really helps feed what we build in the future, so that we make sure our products are kind of fit for purpose and well suited to the market. So I think that's a big focus, Fico. And I think the other thing that we're really doing is a lot on the development side. So I think probably what we'll see in the next 1 to 2 months is a lot of enhancements to the mobile wallet. So we've got a fairly solid platform on kind of laptops and desktops for issuing and verification of credentials. And then so the other part to this is, of course, the storage and management of those credentials by the holders, the individuals, the users, and a lot of focus will go into that aspects by the development team.
Thanks for the updates, Nick. I think we can directly now jump to the questions. And we recently see that the bear market is in its full trend, and people want to know to what extent we have been impacted by these bear markets. At the same time, they also want to know what are the most ambitious goals of the projects in the future. And according to the roadmap, what are the most important next priorities that we are working at the moment? There's one more question I think the community is very interested in. It is that if the team is equipped with sufficient funds and also related to marketing activities, etc., to meet the goals of the roadmap.
Yeah, I noticed that user had got many questions in instead of one, so that's all good. So I'll pick those apart one by one. I think probably the first thing, it would be remiss not to mention part of the reason we're in a bear market as well. I think obviously FTX is very fresh in everyone's minds. The exchange that kind of filed for bankruptcy last week. And certainly, I'm glad that Doc really didn't or had never used FTX as an exchange. So thankfully, we are not directly impacted by it in any way. But of course, the entire industry will be impacted by this in one way or another, whether it's kind of maybe a longer crypto winter is what some people are predicting. So I think that may have some impact on projects. I mean, from Doc's perspective specifically, we focus quite a lot. It's kind of boring, but it's necessary that we focus a lot on really good kind of governance and financial management. So I think one of the downsides of FTX was, amazingly, they didn't have any board of directors. So there was no one there kind of looking after the guys running the company, giving them advice and making sure they were making all the right judgment calls. So I think at Doc, we spent a lot of time with our board of directors, lawyers and accountants that are on the team, making sure that when we're thinking about making decisions, that they're being kind of checked and verified by others. So we're not doing anything that maybe we shouldn't be doing or using bad judgment. So I think that's a big thing. But I think in terms of being sustainable, so Doc has focused a lot on financial management, as I said, and I think that we've moved a lot of our assets, we've spread our risk. So we hold a number of tokens, but we also put more of our priority recently, leading into the probably the start of this year, I should say, on holding assets that were non-volatile. So even cash and also non-algorithmic stable coins. So that means that we're in a kind of a really solid, stable base. So I'm really happy where we're at. And I mean, the Doc team has not changed in size at all. There's been a number of layoffs in other places. Obviously, they're bigger firms, but we have a stable and consistent team, which I think is super important when you're trying to build the products that we're trying to build. So I think that that's a good thing for us, and definitely interesting to see how all the FTX stuff, kind of what happens there. But thankfully, Doc are not too embroiled in that. Although I think, like I said, I think the entire industry will be impacted. And most ambitious goals of the project was kind of really the first main question. For Doc, it's to become the largest independent entity and provider of identity and verifiable credentials. So I'm saying independent because we're up against enormous companies like Microsoft and IBM. But I think with what Doc has built and how easy it is to use, some of the unique selling points our technology has, I think there's obviously no guarantees, but I think we're really well placed to become certainly one of the market leaders. So that's a big driver for us. The other question, I think, Vico, that you shared was what is the most important next priority on the roadmap? And as I mentioned at the start, a wallet upgrade is the biggest thing for us over the next kind of 1 to 2 months. So we're all, I mean, I don't know the percentages of people that are using their mobile phones now, but it's very prominent. And particularly in the crypto space as well. I mean, every person in the crypto space, of course, has a mobile wallet that's on their phone and or on some kind of mobile device, and that has been a big focus for us. So developing these tools that are mobile has been something that we've focused on, and so that's a big priority for us. And there's also another couple of things that I'll maybe talk about later in relation to kind of go-to-market stuff that is important, but is not necessarily a feature that we're developing. I think I got everything there, Vico.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything that I should be answering.
Yeah.
I missed, because that was quite a lot of questions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the person, Durjoy Palit, I think he had very primary concerns about the future of the project, and especially when we are in bear markets, people are concerned if they have invested in a project, they want to know what the future is like. And obviously, if they can know directly from the head or the CEO of the company, it really helps. So thanks again. Thanks for all the answers, Nick.
No worries. I think as well, just to say, Vico, it's understandable as well. Like if you look at projects now, it's even having someone that runs the company sit in front of you and say stuff as well is definitely no guarantee these days either. It's really, we're trying to use crypto in a way that's trustless, and at the end of the day there needs to be some element of trust in the people that are running these companies, or processes or structures need to be put in place to make sure that that those individuals are held to account and doing things in a responsible way. So it's absolutely reasonable that people are particularly nervous right now, and I think it's going to take the crypto industry a while to build the trust back in.
Yes, 100%. We all believe it will take some time to build that trust back in crypto. And at the same time, the promises we are making with Web3 and crypto, how closely crypto is connected with the Web3. I think the whole trust building process and taking this industry to a trustless ecosystem, it is going to be a long journey for all of us. Let's see. Adding to this, I think I have the next question. It is from Regaltos. I think this question is coming from our very recent announcement we have made with Burst IQ. Regaltos wants to know, so Doc is will also work in the healthcare sector. What kind of transformations and advancements can be done with Doc network in the healthcare sector, I believe? And what tools will be there that will give primary care physicians an opportunity to review their patients and probably at a single glance?
Yes, I think the person asking the question is obviously seeing our announcement with our US partner Burst IQ. So they're working in the healthcare space and doing some really interesting things there. And ultimately what they're using Doc's verifiable credentials for is their vision is to have any piece of health data turn into a verifiable credential. And you might think, well, so what? What does that really mean? And if you think about some of the features that verifiable credentials have, one of the most important features that they have is that they are controlled by the holder or the recipient of those credentials, which is key. And obviously that they're tamper-proof and forgery resistant as well, which are also important. But if you think about the individual having healthcare records that are then controlled by the holder, which in this case would be the patient, that becomes quite powerful because it It moves us away from the current status quo where, Vico, if you went to your local healthcare provider or clinician, they would have your records and you don't really get to see them. You maybe glance at them when they've got them, but they decide what you see and they decide who gets your records. And if you start to make healthcare records into verifiable credentials, that flips it entirely on its head. And it means that that's information that's extremely personal to you. It should be the case that you control that information, where it's stored and who gets to see it. So that's a big thing that verifiable credentials and indeed Doc in partnership with Burst IQ will bring into the healthcare space. And then if you start to think about adding in other technologies that we are building right now, some of the people listening to this podcast, just because they are familiar with crypto, is they'll have heard things like zero knowledge proofs, ZKP, and also things like anonymous credentials, selective disclosure. And those are really those types of technologies enable something to be proven without necessarily needing to reveal everything to prove that information. So for example, if you could use something like selective disclosures in the case of having your own medical records, you might decide that your doctor might be interested in just establishing what's your blood type. So I might decide I'm going to not give him my entire medical history or even my entire kind of medical status, but I might just say, well, I'm going to reveal only my blood type to you. And that's all the information that they will have. So that gives you maximum privacy and maximum control over your data. So I think those are going to be some of the really exciting things that we're going to see in the healthcare space.
Thanks a lot, Nick. I think, the healthcare sector, I also believe it is one of the most promising sectors where verifiable credentials can play a very crucial role, and especially like transforming the entire space very fundamentally, how the data is dealt and how can we make it tamper-proof. Coming to the next questions, I think the next two questions are very much related to our marketing side, and people want to know like how we are expanding, how we are growing, what type of marketing strategies that we are keeping in place to increase and improve our brand presence. At the same time, they also want to know if we are planning any kind of strategic partnerships that can kind of level up our project and also help us grow in the long term.
Yes, I think there's three main aspects to our adoption strategy. One is inbound marketing, which I'll explain in a second. There's outbound, kind of more sales led. And then there's also integrations with marketplaces. So on the content, and these are very broad because it's quite a broad question, so it's quite a broad answer. But the content side is leaving lots of pieces of content online so that people who are interested in what we're building, potentially as users or issuers on our platform, as we call it, they're seeing all these breadcrumbs dotted around the internet. They're finding out how Doc are doing things. They're also understanding our approach through this content. And then if they're interested, they're actually getting in touch with us and we're starting that process of engaging with them to see if we can help. So I think that's probably the most effective strategy for us, because it means that when we start speaking to companies that have come to us, they already realize that they're interested in what we're building, and they're pretty well educated as well about what it is that we do. And so that's become effective. And the types of content that we're putting out there is obviously stuff like this AMA that we're doing today, Vico, but also some of the podcasts that we're doing on Identi3, the social stuff that we put out. We're quite active on LinkedIn as well. And then when we have people and they start to get interested, then we offer a free trial of the product itself. So why would you want to lock that thing up? That's ultimately what you're enticing them into using and showing that there's a real value to them to use this thing. So we also ensure that it's very easy for people that are interested to pick up and just start using Doc to see if it's something that's of interest. So that's the inbound stuff. Outbound is more proactive. So we are picking industries where we know we provide value, looking at companies within those industries where we think we can make a difference. And then we're proactively targeting them and outreaching to them to see if what we offer is of interest. I think most people, that's just a kind of outbound selling. And then the final thing that we're doing is marketplace integrations. So Marketplaces exist for lots of different things. So you can marketplaces for apps, so obviously kind of app stores and things. But from a business side as well, like a B2B, you'll see marketplaces for lots of things that you might not have been aware of. So one would be tools for developers that allow them to enable their users to authenticate and access their services. So one that we recently started working with is Auth0, which is owned by Okta. And so they're using our Web3 ID product for enabling private and secure access to systems using verifiable credentials. And so having that marketplace means that we're tapping into an entirely new audience and making them aware of what we're building. And we're going to be looking at another couple of marketplaces very early in the new year. One is potentially putting our API up into an API marketplace. And that would be a way for developers to be aware of Doc existing where they maybe weren't before and starting to trial and use our software basically. So those would be the kind of main strategies that we would have for growing adoption.
Absolutely. I think these were the points which people definitely wanted to know how our business sales, like what our strategies are regarding business development, sales, and product marketing side. I think there is another question asked by Rico GX, and he wants to know what type of maybe like marketing elements and strategies we are lining up on attracting new investors. And I can potentially add traders as well. So if you can add like maybe 1 or 2 points here, I think this will just complete the entire package of the marketing side of our company.
Yeah. So I think in terms of attracting people that are not just using the platform, I think it's kind of part of the same answer really. So what we're very focused on at Doc is building things that have value to people, that companies can come and use, and they will get a business benefit, or if individuals are using it, they're getting a benefit. It makes their life easier, it makes them more secure, it makes them more private, it puts them in control of their own data. And I think if we're doing that in a really efficient way as a project, people will start, more and more people will start to use it, and that value that we'll generate will filter through the whole ecosystem. So I think what we're not is a project without substance that is maybe just trying to do some quick fix, marketing campaigns without any real structure or any innovation behind the company. I would say we're very much, we're trying to be as far away from that as we possibly can. So what we are doing is building long-term value in the whole ecosystem by providing solutions that companies and individuals want to use.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And obviously seeing the nature of our products and how like code Web3 it is, we know that the adoption is going to take some time. And also like as we keep and continue to educate people more and more about verifiable credentials and decentralized identifiers. Just to add on this point, we have a course available on our blog. If you want to learn what verifiable credentials and decentralized identifiers are, you can just go take that course and also earn a certificate as a verifiable credentials, which you can store in your own Doc wallet apps. Coming to the next question, it is very, Minimo is asking, it is very easy to understand Web2 IDs. Definitely it is. But people are definitely not that much aware of Web3 right now, like I was mentioning. So how can we attract or pull more and more people to join Web3 for DIDs? And I think not just based on Doc level, we can answer this question maybe like on a general level, like how can we attract them? How can we convince them that yes, Web3 is going to come? And at the end, you have to adopt to Web3 IDs or DIDs.
Yeah. I think it comes down to UX or user experience, Vico. So I think you have to make new technology at least as easy and as good to use as the technology it's replacing. And if it's not, then it won't replace it. So if you even think about how much of a hassle it is, maybe if you decide to use a different web browser, maybe use Chrome and you switch to Safari or something like that, it's annoying at the start. It's slower because you're not familiar with it, and so when you're trying to get people to move from Web 2 to Web 3, at the moment you're asking them to make some sacrifices. And so what you're asking them to do is say, well, yes, you'll maybe get more granular control over your own information. You'll control things more. You might be your own bank or controller of your own identity or some other piece of information. But there is downsides right now, and that downside is that it's less convenient, harder to use, a bit more clunky on the UX side. And so I think, and to be fair to Web3, I'm not rubbishing or trashing Web3 builders right now. Of course I'm not, because I'm in that field as well. But Web2 has had 15, 20 year head start. So it's going to take some time for us to make the sufficient improvements in Web3 that we're going to get mass market. But I do think what we are seeing right now is early adoption for sure. And I think that's been driven by, I think young people are much more privacy conscious than maybe the generation before are. And I think that they are, as soon as these tools become great for them to use, then I think they'll start to make that switch, because they seem to recognize that their data is being used in ways that they might not either agree with or consent to. So I think that's the aspects from users. I think the other part of the question was also companies. And I think that's slightly different. I think companies, they're actually wanting to basically be able to add value. So it becomes more about making efficiencies, where Web3 is better than some of the technologies. So I'll probably diverge slightly from making this more Web3 generic and make this more specific to Doc, just because I can speak with some knowledge there. But for example, with verifiable credentials, you can create information that the verifier, the person checking that information, doesn't need to manually check. So if you have a prospective employer checking the university degree certificate by a candidate, they don't have to phone up the university with verifiable credentials. They can literally check the verifiable presentation and make sure it verifies and it matches and everything is signed correctly, and they can know who issued that credential and basically make a judgment that this is a legitimate document. So it makes it much more efficient for businesses. Another one that we see is also things like KYC, which would be relevant to all of us really, because when we're using these exchanges, Vico centralized exchanges, we're probably continually having to go through KYC every time we go to a new exchange, or even exchanges that we're members of, they might ask us to re-verify every so often. And so instead of having to go through that process every single time, imagine if when you go through the identity verification check, you're issued with a credential at the end of that. And then any time after that you're asked for your to go through an identity verification, all you do is send them a credential through. And that makes it much more efficient for that exchange or business. And it really would, I'd imagine, increase onboarding percentages quite massively and make it a better user experience, and also cut down on the time that their users are spending. So I think that would be different for businesses. So I think they'll adopt Web3 when they start to realize and see the business efficiencies that they'll get from using this technology.
Yeah, 100%. And that's a very excellent point, especially the first one. Like we are mentioning, although we are talking about so many promises and revolutions that Web3 can bring, but in the end, if the product is not going to provide value and the product is not having a better user experience for the user, it will be, we probably will not see that switch, or we will not see that transition unless and until it is making things better for the end user. That's a very excellent point, and I think something which all the Web3 developers and entrepreneurs probably also will consider in the future. Coming to one of our own product, and like we were talking about product, there are a few questions we have related to our products as well. There's the first one. It says that we will be using white label wallet, where customers can have their own brand wallets by simply using the functionality of the Doc wallet. When we call it white label wallet, Regaltos wants to know, like, what are like the advanced, maybe like security features that will be provided in this white wallet app?
Yeah, so white labeling is really a way for developers or companies or projects that want a mobile app but don't want to build their own mobile app. So Doc has built our app, and they can effectively take the essential components of that, reskin it, rebrand it, switch some features on or off depending on their use, and they have a ready to go wallet. So that's basically what a white label wallet would be. Security features that they would have are Obviously, particularly with FTX, it's that we're seeing there. You lost tokens, or people lost tokens very unfortunately because they were on that exchange. They deposited them. They didn't control them. They were controlled by the exchange. And unfortunately, obviously, as now is transpiring, those tokens were not held as they should have been and used elsewhere. But a big thing about Doc's wallet is you have custody over your own tokens or credentials, it could be as well. So you're basically managing your own private keys, or the wallet is doing that for you to make it nice and easy to use. But I think that's one of the big features of the white label wallet or Doc's existing mobile app, is the fact that you're controlling your own private keys. Nobody else has ownership or is able to take those tokens away from you. Another thing that we built into the app as well is the ability to log into that by biometrics. I personally use kind of facial recognition. I think you can probably use your thumbprint as well. And those are other aspects that you can use in place of maybe less secure things, arguably like PINs and passwords. It's much more user friendly. But that would be another feature, kind of making sure that the login to that wallet is secure. And of course, we also enable the ability to create encrypted backups. So everyone that has a wallet where they control the private keys obviously needs to make sure that they back it up, because if something happens to the device that wallet is held upon, it's lost, it's stolen, it goes through the washing machine and stops working. Unless you backed up that wallet, then you will lose access to those tokens or credentials, whatever you have there. So we also offer the ability to do encrypted backup to keep it secure. So those are the main features.
Sounds good. Sounds great. I mean, it's pretty cool to see that we are having questions from like all sectors and all sections of our company. The next question is related to staking, and Bankai wants to know if we can clarify like about nominating validators for the POS networks.
Sure.
So the main question is like, are validators selected randomly or based on the amount of DOC token staked, or maybe like a mix of both? And kind of how much is the minimum to maximum ratio, I believe what Bankai is asking for getting the validator and emission rewards?
Okay. So validators are selected like any proof of stake network. We have we have two types of validators. One is an active set. Those are that are actively validating, and those that are waiting to become validators. So the active set in DOC is 50 validators, and the ones that will become active are the validators that have the most stake. So a proof of stake network, people are locking up tokens potentially against a validator node and saying, I trust this guy, I'm going to lock my tokens up. I can't use them. And if that validator gets enough of that stake, enough of those tokens locked up, then they will become a validating node on the network. And it's the top 50. So using a combination of the validator's own stake, so how much of their own tokens that they're using to nominate against their node, and also the delegations or nominations of other people. So Vico, you might like the DOC node, for example, and you might say, yeah, their commission rate's quite low. I would like to also earn some rewards by chipping in and also locking up my tokens and staking against that node. So a combination of what the nominators or delegators are putting into that node plus their own stake gives you a total, and it's the top 50 with the highest total are the ones that are actually validating the network. So the network is calculating that, and it's running elections. I think it's every era. So I think every 12 hours it's deciding who the active set is, and that validator set has the potential to constantly change based on how much stake each of those nodes have.
All right, that's good to know. And also, if you want to know more about like how validators can set up their nodes, like the complete tutorial, you can go to our documentation, and we have written like a complete step-by-step guide how DOC staking works and how validators can contribute to the ecosystem. Coming to the last two questions of this AMA, and these are the questions we have received from our Turkish community. So again, big thanks to these questions. Coming to the first question, sorry. So the starting of the question says that 80% of the investors are focused on the token price in short term rather than long term. And I completely agree with that. But how are we, like, what are the motivations and benefits for the investors who are holding like Doc coin in the long run? And as we were also mentioning in between this AMA, like how much long term and with the vision we have kept, seeing the adoption and the time it will take for that adoption. So although Nick has already shed some light on our product side and how the products are kind of going to expand its influence on the coin, on the token. So Nick, if you can just give maybe a very brief answer, like why should investors choose us and what are the advantages of holding the Dogecoin?
Yeah, I would agree as well. Like, I don't know what the percentages would be, but yeah, I suspect there's more short-term holders than long-term, which is a shame. But I think that's the way things are. I think for us, it's going back to the earlier answer. The motivations for holding Doc is that we're building something of value. We're building products that exist and that people are using today for commercial benefit and to make their lives better as well. And that's our focus. And there's a lot and I've got no doubt that in the long run that we'll achieve our goals. Like, we've got a very strong team. We're very focused. We've got paying clients on board already. And it's just a case of scaling and growing that, keep, rinse and repeat and just keep improving all the time. And even the time that you've been with the company, Vico, you can probably see that improvement happening quite significantly. So I think that's why so it's the long-term benefit that we're focused on, building products that people are actually using. And certainly there's a lot of stuff there always has been in the crypto community. There probably always will be, of a lot of vaporware type projects that sound great, they're well marketed, but actually there's nothing there. They don't provide any long-term significant benefit. So I think that people that recognize that Doc are providing something of value, and I'd be optimistic about us growing the company in the longer term, then that would be a reason to maybe think about kind of being with us for longer, I guess.
Absolutely. Those are like very great points. And just to add a little bit on this, if you want to learn like how Doc is like a core Web3 project, how Doc blockchain is kind of being the underlying layer, like the identity and the protocol layer of Web3. And at the same time, what are the utilities of Doc token in the whole blockchain and the product ecosystem? You can check our documentations, and there is a complete, very elaborated guide available. We are translating that guide to multiple languages as well. But the guide is already available in Turkish and English both, and you can read it in our blog and our Medium blog. Coming to the last question of this AMA, and this is actually a very interesting question because we have been tracking the progress of these soul-bound tokens as well. Binance has released a soul-bound called BAB token, and I have seen like many other projects are getting involved with this Web3 identity space with this whole soul-bound based products. So Nick, if you can just briefly explain how these like BAB tokens are different from Doc's DIDs, and also like how Doc DIDs are, like what kind of similarities and differences we share with NFTs, for example.
Yeah, it's a good question. You're right. It's probably saving the best till last, Vico. So I think some of the similarities are that they're both about identity. And obviously for the uninitiated, soul-bound tokens, I think defined by Vitalik in a paper, maybe at the start of this year, something like that, were non-transferable NFTs. So normally NFTs can be just obviously transferred, sold, moved around, and are all on chain. Whereas a soul-bound NFT is intended to not be transferable. So you get it and then you can't do anything with it, it's yours. That makes it more effective for managing identity, because of course identity is not something you should be able to transfer. It kind of defeats the whole purpose. So that's where there are some similarities with verifiable credentials and around identity. I think where the differences are is that with verifiable credentials, a very big aspect of them is they're off-chain typically. So what goes on-chain is maybe the identifier of who issued out the credential, and then who it was going to. But you could look at a chain and not know who they are. And so verifiable credentials are off-chain and typically held within the wallet of the holder. With Soulbound NFTs, they're all on-chain. So that information is all there for everyone to see. And of course, because blockchains are unencrypted, you can literally view that information. So it makes it a lot less private for the individual as well. But I'm sure they have their use cases as well. But certainly those are the kind of major differences that I would see. The verifiable credentials do identity, but probably in a more privacy focused way.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, I think this was the question, and we are seeing like new innovations shaping up in the Web3 industry, and the innovative ways different companies are also finding. Especially, I mean, they may be like a bit different than like what decentralized identifiers and DIDs, how Doc offers it, but in the way it is like, again, like a very innovative way of kind of extending like how Web3 is growing and the product offerings that other companies also have to offer. I think that's a wrap for today's AMA. And Nick, thank you once again for answering all the questions. It was a very comprehensive AMA, and I must say, like, a very big thanks to all the dockers, to our entire community for sending us these questions. As we can already see, these questions were covering like every aspect of our project, products, marketing, sales, competitors, partners, like everything. So big thanks again for all these questions. We will be announcing the winners of the AMA by Monday. So till then, cheers and have a nice day.
Yeah, thanks, Nico. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.